Okay, welcome everybody to our Earth Week series of discussions focused on the Maine Climate Action Plan, the 4-year plan from the governor and her team to tackle the challenges of climate change. This series of Zoom events, mostly, that we've got going on all week is a collaboration between Central Hall Commons and the Piscataquis Democrat Education and Outreach Committee. My name is Carol and I'm your moderator tonight. A few housekeeping things. We have a small group, so Matt has indicated he likes to have a discussion. So if you have a question, just raise your hand or wait till someone else stops speaking and hopefully that flow will go well. Shauna is monitoring this. It's on Facebook Live on the Commons Facebook page. And if there are any comments there, she'll let us know, or questions. And the Commons is recording this Zoom. So is everybody okay with it being recorded for their archive? Great. Okay. We want to recognize and honor the current tribes of the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Penobscot, the Passamaquoddy, the Maliseet, and the Micmac people, and who have been stewards of this land that we live in for generations, millennia. We support their efforts for land and water protection and restoration and for cultural healing and recovery. So I'm going to introduce my better half, Eric Boothroyd, and he will give a little background on the strategy that we are talking about tonight and introduce Matt. Go ahead, Eric.
Thanks, Carol. So tonight we focus on Strategy B of the Maine Climate Council's Climate Action Plan, which addresses modernizing Maine's buildings. This afternoon, we learned that 54% of Maine's greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation, but heating, cooling, and lighting of buildings are responsible for about 1/3 of Maine's greenhouse gas emissions. Maine can reduce greenhouse gases by modernizing our buildings to use cleaner energy, increase energy efficiency, and utilize lower carbon building materials. To achieve this, one of the plan's goals is to install 100,000 new heat pumps in Maine by 2025. Tonight's guest speaker is Matt Scott. Matt is a partner, vice president, and the heat pump manager for Dave's World here in Dover Foxcroft. He has been working in the appliance field since he was 14 years old, and specifically with heat pump technology since 2006. And now to inform us on heat pump technology and residential installation, I am pleased to introduce Matt Scott.
Thank you, everyone. Glad to be here. I have a lot of passion for heat pumps in general. I think I got lucky. My education of greenhouse gases and the effect on our carbon footprint came after the fact of my passion for heat pumps. I wish that I could say that that was the original intent, but that would be untruthful. I love what we're doing as far as how efficient the heat pumps are. But the initial interest was the lack of education on heat pumps, and especially if they don't work in Maine. I really dove into that as far as what they can and what they can't do, what their limits are, because a lot of Mainers have a limited belief of what they can do and what they can't do. And I think that the more conversations like this, the better off people are, as far as our climate. I'm not that well educated on the impact of what's going on in the world when it comes to emissions. I just know that I'm on the right side of things, and I believe that. I believe in science, and I believe that we all have not only an individual choice, but as far as corporations, it's a feel-good business, and I absolutely love being a part of it. I can't talk to you on the dramatic impact that we're making as far as, you know, we're converting 50 homes a week over to heat pumps. We currently have 4 stores, 72 employees, 60 vans on the road, doing nothing but heat pump installs every day. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of, I am so happy that there is a team of people that understand the impact, the positive impact that we're doing. But because of the bandwidth and as much as we're doing, I have to rely on a higher guidance and a higher power as far as what that is doing for our environment. I just know it's a good thing. And I hope that eventually that the electricity that is providing these magic boxes in my mind, I'm hoping that can be more of a focal point, because I can deliver 300% efficiency from electricity. But now that I'm more educated on carbon footprint and emissions, then I'm hoping to have that climb up the ladder to where that electricity comes from. I think that's another big part of this. I'm kind of at the tail end of it, right? I can take a unit of electricity and turn it into 3 units of heat, but where did that electricity come from? But being on the right side of this challenge, you know, this challenge that that we all need to be aware of, I'm awfully proud of it. I've been involved with them now since 2006. I was 26 years old. It was my first year buying into Days World. And I literally just found one and wanted to see what it could do. And then I just could not believe the efficiency that it provided. And then the biggest thing is how to get that message out to Mainers that they do work and that they do save you money. And then along came the programs, Efficiency Maine, which I was involved with from the beginning. They've done a great job, phenomenal job. And there's a lot to be said there. I can't wait for questions because I'm better off answering questions. A lot of people, in the beginning, I was a salesman, right? I was a salesman selling this product. I had to sell you why this product was good for you and the environment. Now I'm a guide. You know, there's so much work coming at me. I guide you to what's better. If you understand what I'm saying and you can afford the investment to make a better world for yourself as far as comfort, and as far as a better world as far as emissions, then I'm your guy. So I'm really good at, and there's so much in between there. I know that's why I rely on questions. The next challenge is the governor saying, we want 100,000 of them. I do about a third of the heat pumps in Maine every year. To add another 20-25% capacity means people. And that means skilled laborers. It means educated people in the skill, in the trades. And that's the bottleneck. The idea is there. You've got people like myself, Royal River, Valley Home Services, some of the big players. You know, we make up for over half of the installs. There's 460 something installers of heat pumps in Maine. You know, between the 3 of us, we do half of them. Our problem is that you can't hire fast enough. I can't pay enough. I can't pay higher wages. I mean, we're paying top dollar in the industry, and it's not a lack of money to attract people to work hard and get these things installed. It boils all the way down to trades and the lack of trades, and we're, in my opinion, is that we're getting further and further away from the education of using your hands to in the trades, plumbing, electrical, all that. So that is really another huge topic, and that is why I'm a part of some different groups. and constantly trying to find more people to install these magic boxes.
If I could ask you, Matt, are there any of the trade schools, Kennebec Valley, any of those who are offering programs?
Oh, absolutely. But they come out very green. It's so what we do is that we take our, we've got about 30 lead installers, and then every single year we add an apprentice to them, and they'll work with them for 6 months to a year, depending on their talent and how fast they can learn. And then as soon as they're done, we split them up and then add 2 more people, and they just continue to do that. That's how we've grown the way that we've grown, but it takes time. So the 100,000 heat pumps that she wants, very proud of the idea, very worried about setting a goal that we can't achieve. I think that's an exciting number. I think what she is doing is great, right? But this is also an industry and a product that it has to be done right. You can't literally slap these things in. You can, and they'll work, but for how long? And then what happened, and what my biggest fear is that we're going to create a bad name for heat pumps. Because, for instance, if you don't do a triple evac and you don't get all the air out of the lines properly, and you don't start the unit up, you will see a problem within 3 to 5 years. So I don't want everyone to jump on this great bandwagon and get a heat pump and then have them bite them in the butt and then start reverse advertising the benefits. That's a huge concern.
Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Matt, could you just outline how the technology works? Where does the heat come from? I'd
love to find the balance between science and how it works, and then layman's terms, because it's a rabbit hole. Okay. My favorite way to describe it is that we are literally moving heat from one place to another. We're not creating it. Okay. So when you light oil on fire or wood on fire or anything other than heat pumps, you have to light it on fire in order to obtain BTUs, okay, which creates emissions. Those emissions, they have to be excused from the house, which means chimney. So you lose, with wood, you lose about 30% out the chimney. And then you take a high efficient propane boiler, and then you get 98% efficient. Okay. So with heat pumps, you don't have any emissions. So you can achieve more than 100% efficiency. Okay. I'll start there. So meaning if I spend $1 on the most efficient propane boiler, I'm going to get 98 cents worth of heat out of it. If I buy $1 worth of electricity with a heat pump, especially right now, I'm getting $4 of heat out. January, February, I'm getting, $2.50 to $3 out. So that being explained, how do we absorb heat at 0 degrees? Okay, so 0 degrees to anybody in this room, Sue, Leslie, Gloria, you would think that if they walked outside and it was 0 degrees, they'd be like, it's cold out, right? It's cold out. There's no heat out there. And that's where this is why it's been so challenging to get people to understand it, is because anybody with normal thinking be like, there's no heat outside at 0 degrees. Okay, but so then we have to identify what temperature is there no heat, not to the human touch, but what is that degree? That degree is absolute 0. Okay, so that means minus 460 degrees. Pluto has that experience where there's no heat. So all we have to do with that theory is, now that we know there's heat at 0 degrees and there's a lot of heat, how do we trap it? And this is my layman's terms part. And when I explain it, I'd never mean to dumb down the idea. It's just like, how do you explain that? How do you explain that on a scale with thousands of conversations and then can it so people can understand it? So this is what I've come up with, is that heat naturally travels to where it's colder. So when you open your door and it's January out, when you open the door, heat naturally travels to where it's colder. So it's rushing outside and the cold is coming in the bottom of your floor and the heat's rushing out. So naturally heat travels to where it's colder. So what we have to do in order to trap that heat, think of a mouse trap. How do we trap those BTUs of heat outside when it's 0 degrees? Is that using that same theory I just said, we have to create something that's colder. Okay. So how do we create something that's colder outside than it is outside? Well, refrigeration. So with refrigeration, we can take that outside coil and we can flash off refrigerant, because refrigerant, like for instance, water, when you boil water, 212 degrees, that's when it goes from one state to the other. We've got to do that with the refrigerant, but we can do that at minus 60 degrees, not 212 degrees. So what we do is we boil that refrigerant, so it's minus 60 degrees. And when you have it 0 degrees outside, and then you have something that's outside that's minus 60 degrees, what is the difference between 0 degrees and minus 60 degrees? 60 degrees, right? 60 degrees of what? Heat. So all we do is we make something colder, we track that heat, it comes into the coil, we absorb it, and then using the refrigeration process, we now can absorb that heat through a pipe and then bring it inside and then deliver it with a fan. But once you condense it with a compressor, now we can compress it. We can start collecting, and it's so fun to have this conversation, because I'm like, okay, we only have 60 degrees of heat, but let's keep collecting it until we have 130 degrees, and then we'll deliver it inside. It's that simple, that complex, but that simple. We are trapping and tricking. We're literally tricking heat to follow us on the other side of that envelope, which is inside. And we just do that over and over and over again throughout the hour. Everything's based on BTUs per hour with your square footage. So I know how many BTUs you need per square foot. That way I can size the outdoor units of how many BTUs I can trick into being transferred into your house per hour. That is why I call it the magic box, because it's a trap. It's a mouse trap for heat. That so when I say, so the other interesting thing about heat pumps is that, okay, that heat didn't cost us anything, right? But there's a toll. We have to pay for the device that is going to move it. It's like driving down the interstate. The interstate's free until you pay the toll, right? So we have to pay the toll, which is the kilowatts that are needed in order to make the mechanism work, the pump to work, to bring the heat inside, which is a fraction of the cost of lighting something on fire, losing a third of it out the chimney. That's probably the most interesting part of the whole thing, is that we're transferring heat, not creating it. That's the coolest part about it. And then that's heating. And then in cooling, you're doing the exact opposite. You're making the inside coil cold, attracting the heat to that, and then pumping it outside, which is way less expensive. Most homes, 2,500 square foot home, you're looking at $12 to $20, depending on the load, to air condition a month, where one little window rattler, that I call them. I've got big words today, by the way, everyone, real big words. Those window rattlers could be, $20 to $40 per unit. And then you have those throughout every room. So
Yeah.
huge savings as far as electricity. And they're using a fraction of the electricity that we're traditionally used to as far as creating air conditioning or heat BTUs. I hope that answered it, Eric, for you. I can get way more scientific and I can use bigger words, but it's like, really, it's just that simple. It's a bicycle. It's literally a bicycle.
Yeah, thanks. That's good. Leslie, why don't you go ahead?
That was actually a great answer, Matt. So thank you for that. And you made me think about you're talking about that basically you're getting more efficiency out of the electricity than you're paying for the electricity. So you're getting more out of that electricity. I forget the way you phrased it.
Well, the electricity is not the source of the heat.
Right.
Think back to I think everybody here was around in the 70s when there was electric baseboard heat. That was the big thing. What's crazy about that is that everything's based on a COP. What is it costing me and what am I getting out? The coefficient of performance, that's the COP of something, okay? So electric baseboard, actually, believe it or not, which is crazy. You buy one, you get one. One in, one out. There's no lighting anything on fire and it going out. Okay, but what cost everybody the money was the price per kilowatt, was the production of electricity. Okay, so how did we get rid of that theory? Well, because we're not using electricity to create the heat like we are in resistant heating baseboard. The electricity is only the cost of transferring the energy. We're not creating it with it. So that is why it's so more efficient. So when a lot of people say, how much is it going to cost me in electricity to produce heat? Nothing. It doesn't cost you $1. It doesn't cost a penny to create that heat. It's the toll. It's the transfer of it, running the pump, which is a 3-phase compressor now, which is that inverter technology that we talked about. And it's such a great question to dive, and that's a good segue into this part of it, is that when the computer was married with the mechanical device, the compressor, is that we were able to take just this advancement in computers and then regulate the speeds of the fan and the compressor. So compare it to city driving, gas mileage, to interstate. Once you get that car in motion and you get up to speed, it costs less to keep it going down the highway than it is start, stop, start, stop. So our traditional heating system that was electric or even resistance heating, it was on or off, on or off. Here, we're on all the time, okay? So meaning that, let's compare it to a car because everyone can identify that. A heat pump can go 1 mile an hour or 100 miles an hour. It can go 19 miles an hour, it can go 22 miles an hour, it can go 72 miles an hour. Where a traditional heating system was 0 or 100 miles an hour, 0, 100 miles an hour. So I'm looking at my heat pump. As the heat pump raises the temperature in the home and everything that is in the home, the chairs, the tables, the countertops, everything that's in the home, it doesn't need 100% anymore. So if you have your thermostat set at 70 degrees, at first that heat pump's delivering 130 degrees, it's working 100% capacity, it's costing you the most amount of money. As we get closer to that set point, 70 degrees, it backs off to running 30 to 40% and it idles. So instead of that air coming out now to 130 degrees, it's coming out at 70 degrees and maintaining. Because we don't want to have to start up again, right? That's what costs all the money. So the unit going as fast as it can, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna go right down to a walk. I'm not gonna jog, I'm gonna walk. And I'm gonna maintain the temperature. And that is what is a huge achievement, was that inverter technology, meaning we can go 0 to 100 and everything in between.
Matt, I've got a question from the chat.
Yep.
What is the cold temperature that cuts the efficiency? And what is the backup besides a generator if there's no electricity?
If there's no electricity, you're right in the same place you were with the furnace or anything else, okay? And so a lot of people are like, what am I gonna do if I get a heat pump and the power goes out? Well, the same thing you're gonna do with the oil furnace. So I don't want that to be confused with the efficiency of why a heat pump's important, because that's one of the objections. You use a generator. You can use a generator, just like you would with your oil furnace. So heat pumps in Maine, they've come a long way. They started off at 14 degrees, meaning they could operate and extract heat from Mother Nature at 14 degrees outside. And then they moved to 5 degrees and then down to 0 degrees and then -5. -5 was it was magic, because I mean, Bangor, Maine hits, if you guys are all got Google in front of you, you should see the average temperatures of Maine. A lot of people are like, oh, it's Maine. It's we have to get ready for -30. No, you don't. So Bangor, Maine hit minus or below 0 10 times in average for the last 5 years. Okay, so the heat pumps that we sell now are rated to -13 and -15 degrees. And at -13 and -15 degrees, you're 151% efficient. So if we go back and compare it to propane, $1 in, 90 cents out. At minus 13 degrees, we are $1 in, okay, $1.51 out. So you're still achieving more than you're putting in, but the envelope might need more BTUs than that can put out at minus 13 degrees. And that is why it's properly sized. When I do a guide or a sales consultation, I'm saying, what is your purpose of having a heat pump? Do you want it to be primary like my house is? Okay, then we're going to engineer it to be a minus 13 degree unit. You know, because, and then after minus 13 degrees, it's not going to shut off. It's just not going to be putting out the BTUs that I've sized your home for. Light a fire, use your backup oil, use the 3 other sources that us Mainers have, you know? So this is not a silver bullet. It can be. I can put a air handler in your home with electric resistance backup. So a lot of people say at some point a heat pump cannot work in Maine. Absolutely right. But we take your traditional resistance backup, we apply it to the heat pump. And now what's really cool, and this is where the education has repeated itself, because a lot of people don't understand this. Okay, they know somebody that has a heat pump, it works. I love it for cooling. I'm still not really, you know, sold on the heating side of it because of limited and traditional beliefs. But we can now adapt controls, IFTT, if this, then that. We can control your unit that saying, you know what, I want to use my boiler at minus 10 degrees. This control says, hey, it's minus 9 degrees outside, you're up. Switches over to your oil. As soon as it's, you know, minus 7 again, heat pump comes back on. You take you can tell it to do whatever you want. So that's been a huge step in the innovation of heat pumps, is that the brains behind it, the control behind it. But I have now, since 2007, 8, right around there, I put heat pumps as primary, and I've never not used heat pumps since. So I have, and you have to also, when we come with cut sheets, and say Mitsubishi, for instance, says, we're going to heat your home down to minus 13. That is a cover your butt number, because the manufacturer doesn't want to be wrong, right? So they're tested at minus 13. Will they work below minus 13? Yes, they will. They're not going to shut off. They're going to, you're going to be using a little bit more power, but not as much as your propane boiler. And you would never know it if it's sized properly. And that is why we have had this other huge, I wouldn't say problem with heat pumps, is that they've been, in the beginning, not installed and sold properly. What expectations were sold? What were customers told? What can you expect out of them? But I can tell you, no matter how you slice it, you cannot beat above 100% efficiency if it's done right. So I tell people, when I get into deep conversations when I'm in their home, and they're like, and they're throwing everything at me about why, or a debate of why a heat pump, it doesn't work. They've never had one, okay? But they're going to tell me everything they can about why a heat pump doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, we're talking about 1 day out of 10 years that it might not work. Are you going to let that blind you from all the efficiencies and all the lack of carbon footprint that we can achieve? Is that really your motive? You know, and then the answer is always no. Okay, then get a heat pump.
Matt, we have a question in the chat box about how to maximize the efficiency and what cleaning or maintenance is required in order to maximize the efficiency.
Great question. Yeah, great question. So what's different about a heat pump versus a furnace or a pellet stove or anything else you're using is that you're using it 12 months out of the year, typically. So you would think that there's going to be a lot more maintenance, but there isn't. It's a cleaning. So if a heat pump is properly installed and you have it's a sealed system, just like your refrigerator. If you guys notice with your refrigerator at home, you don't have to add refrigerant. It's fusion. It's just chemical. It's a chemical reaction over and over and over and over again until there's a leak in the system. It can last forever until that piping or the gas leaks out. The only maintenance you have to do is that your diffuser, which that coil that I talked about that's heating up, you have to pull air through that in order to transfer the heat back into your home. That's what's transferring the heat from outside in, is a fan blowing over the coil. Well, when we're blowing air over that coil, you're introducing your atmosphere. Grease, dirt, cat hair, dog hair, dandruff, you name it. It's a big vacuum. So that's a double-edged sword. You've got filters in there, it's cleaning your air. If you're on top of that and you're cleaning it, depending on your house and pets and all that, you know, once a month, every other month, you're cleaning your filters. Every year, the manufacturer wants you to clean it. I think it's a waste of money. I like to be really straight and honest with people. Pay us to come every other year, every 24 months, which now you're using a product twice as much as your furnace because you're using air conditioning, right? But you only have to maintain it every other year. So now you're twice as efficient as far as service goes. And it's really simple. We come in and we take a device it's a pressure washer with a big plastic canopy that goes around it, so we don't get water on your floor and on your walls, and we flush it. And then the outdoor unit has a 3-layer coil. So a lot of people are like, I'll just go clean a coil. Like, if anyone knows anyone in Florida, they might go maintain their condensing unit with a hose and clean off that dirt that's been pulled in from, you know, the environment. But with a heat pump, you have a 3-layer coil. So you have to flush it from inside out. And that has to be done from inside out. So we have to take the top off, and then you have all the electronics, because it's a big computer. It's a bicycle with a computer attached to it. So you have to get that flushed out without getting any water on that coil. And that is why it's not a do-it-yourself kind of thing, homeowner type situation, unless, you know, you know what you're doing. So low maintenance. And if it's done properly, you never should have to add refrigerant to it. But every day I've got 6 techs full-time, and we work for a lot, not our own customers, but we're statewide, and we'll take care of any customer that has a heat pump, whether you bought it from us or not. But I would say 60% of our repairs are a leak in a flare, piping, human related.
I have another question, Matt, and it has to do with hot water, heating hot water using heat pumps.
Yep.
And I have a 5-year-old electric water heater that came with the house that I bought, and it's working fine. But I'm wondering how to decide whether to go to heat pump technology or just to continue until it breaks, or what are the considerations there?
Well, first, let's talk about price, where it hits everybody in the pocket. Right now, there's $750 rebate for a hot water heater, right? So you get it for $200 in the end. That creates a no-brainer type situation, okay? But I think you're more interested in the energy efficiency of it, okay? It's the most efficient way you can heat water, but you have to think of it in a different paradigm, because you're robbing Peter to rob Peter to pay Paul when it comes to hot water heater that's heat pump. Meaning it's taking the heat that's in the environment, which is your basement or your mechanical room or wherever you have it. It's taking that ambient temperature that's in the house and then heating your water with it. And then again, you're getting 3 times more efficiency out of it than you could by lighting anything on fire. It's the same theory, okay? But where did you get the BTUs? If you got them from oil, you know, you're not as efficient as robbing Peter to pay Peter, you know? So if you're introducing heat from a heat pump from outside, and then you're taking that heat and then heating your water with it, kudos. But even if you're not doing that, it's a no-brainer. The only thing that people don't like about them is that they're cooling that environment, because you're removing those BTUs out of that room. So if you have it in a living space, like here, I'm in a ranch up here in Greenville. My laundry is right here next to me. It's right next to the kitchen. You know, the noise and the cooling of that might bother, not me, because I'm in the business and I understand it, but a typical homeowner would be like, that bothers me. That's annoying. I can hear it, because they're loud. They're using a fan to pass through that coil. You do have to maintain it, where an electric water heater, you have to replace the elements every 6, 7, 8 years or whatever. This you would have to clean, every couple of years as well.
Mm.
But they
So
give
it would, so if it's in the basement, it would cool the basement.
it would not only cool it, but it'd dehumidify it a little bit too. So the
Well, that's a
byproduct,
good thing.
yeah. So it's not a ton, but it is better than nothing, right? With propane, a propane water heater, you're introducing more moisture into your basement. So this is doing the absolute opposite. You're removing, I would say, probably 3 pints a day, right around there. And so it's drying it, it's cooling it. I had an old farmhouse 7 years ago, and I put one in the basement, and there was no heat down there. I spray foamed it, but I was a little worried that it was going to get too cold. But the coldest it got was 50 degrees. And it was still effective.
My basement is about 50 degrees now.
Yeah.
And it's been spray foamed. I wouldn't want it much colder. I mean, I use it for cold storage for vegetables and stuff like that. But I wouldn't want it much colder than that because it makes the floor cold.
Yeah. So they have you wouldn't notice the difference though with your floor being cold by a couple degrees. It'll drop it probably 3 degrees. But it's a hybrid, right? You can use electric. So January and February, you can run it just on electric. Or if you run it on hybrid, it will know what's more efficient, and it'll switch between hybrid and electric and know the difference.
I'm not sure I know what you mean hybrid.
It's basically a heat pump water heater is an electric water heater with 2 elements in it with a heat pump device on top of it. So on that heat pump, the condensing unit, which would be the outdoor unit on a heat pump, wraps around that tank. So it's hugging the water with that. It's condensing that heat and then hugging the water all the time with that heat pump. If you don't want to use the heat pump, then the 2 elements will come on just like a traditional water heater.
Oh, uh-huh.
So it'll switch between the both of them. The other really good fact that a lot of people don't know about heat pump water heaters is that, actually, I want to throw a question to Leslie, and it's kind of a pop quiz because I'll turn it into a point here. Do you think it's more efficient to have a 125 degree water tank heat pump water heater? Would it be more efficient to have it 125 degrees or 140 degrees? Trick question.
I don't know. 140 degrees.
140 degrees, right? Go with the non-obvious, right? Trick question. So the reason for that is that a heat pump water heater, it takes no energy at all to maintain the temperature of a water heater. Most of our efficiency is lost when we're not using hot water. It's all day long when you're at school and at work and whatever, you're losing all that heat. It takes nothing for a heat pump water heater to maintain it. When you have it at 140 degrees, it achieves it very easily. But when you're using it and you want 120 degrees, you're mixing a lot more cold water with that hot water to achieve the temperature you want using less hot water. And a lot of people don't know that. So it's a no-brainer. There's a reason there's a $750 rebate. They're not in cahoots with the people creating them. They are really efficient.
So your recommendation would be, even though I have not a very old water heater, that I should do that?
Yeah, and I wouldn't get rid of your old water heater either. I would just piggyback it to it. Now you have a backup. So a lot of people are like, oh, I'll get rid of my old one, throw it away. No, just put your other one next to it and ball valve it over. You have a backup on top of a backup, which is great, Like,
Wow.
True Mainer right there. I've got 3 sources of heat and I've got 2 sources of hot water. I'm a Mainer. Yeah, so that's what I would do. It's an absolutely no-brainer if you have the right environment. It would be crazy not to get one because, again, $750 off, $250, and you add another $200 probably to install it from a licensed plumber. $400 you're in. This is years ago now when they first came out. I was the first place in Maine to install them. I was a little proud of that one. And so, of course, we're all giddy and all pumped up about it. So we hooked up kilowatt meters to a home of 4. And it was an average of $12 a month. You're talking 25 to 50 cents a day sometimes to heat their water. You know, you could find that in your car, you
I have
know.
a question, Matt. You talked about a rebate. Is it a rebate or is it a tax? Something you write off on your taxes, or is it an actual rebate?
So I base all sales on the efficiency Maine rebate, okay? Because the federal tax portion changes a lot, and it has everything to do with your income. It has everything to do with your personal household. So you can get up to $300-ish from a heat pump, water heater, or the water heater could be free depending on your accountant. This is where it gets a little gray for me, because I could take my corporate taxes to 3 different tax assessors and get 3 different answers. So it's hard for me to answer that one. But I've heard up to $300. The efficiency Maine rebate is super strong. I don't see it ever going away. And that is basically a pollution tax. That is not tax money that's coming out of Mainers. Efficiency Maine is not designed like that. Efficiency Maine funds come from a pollution tax that is taxed to the corporations, and there is one little tiny percentage. You don't even notice it on your electric bill. It's in the pennies. It's a small percentage of your electric bill that you probably would never even know that until I told you right now. Some people would, but all that money goes into different buckets at Efficiency Maine, and then they regulate who gets those rebates. So
it's an actual rebate. You get the money back. Yeah.
Yep. And depending on the company you're working with, when I get competitive with sales, meaning I'm up against another company, I'll take it off the top of your bill and I'll wait for it for the 4 to 6 weeks. But typically we sell you the retail price, you pay the whole amount. We submit all the paperwork, which it's like buying a house these days. You know, it's quite a bit of paperwork, and then we submit that. We wait for the approval, and then we get our money back. Or you get your money back, excuse me. I've already talked about us getting it back, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. I get really excited about the product because I've sold a lot of things. You know, we do flooring, kitchen cabinets, countertops. We did dish network. We sold DirecTV, appliance repair. We've sold a lot of products, right? And this is the best feel-good product that I've ever come across, because it gives the buyer dividends for years to come. So you've got this maximum comfort that's paying itself back. Another interesting thing about heat pumps is that Efficiency Maine has made it. I'm so glad that everybody hasn't caught on to this, because we cannot put any more heat pumps in every week. And I mean everybody that I know that does it. If everybody caught on to this all at once and knew that it could pay back the dividends that it does, they'd be a long line for it. So I really like this is a selfish statement, by the way, but I really like the way that time has revealed this science and this technology, because we can't sustain everybody wanting one at once, because it wouldn't be done right. Okay. So I really like how it's unraveled the technology. But my point to all that is that you can go on Efficiency Maine, you can get a 10-year loan for a $3,500 heat pump. And then that heat pump will reduce your heating costs 40%. So if you take the loan out at 5.99% and then you compare it to the savings, month 1, you get like a $20 dividend. You can't get that with Tesla right now on the stock market. You know, it's like no matter what you're talking about in the stock market, you do not get a dividend like that. So it literally pays for itself, even if you have the bank paying for it for you. So it's a fun product to sell. It really is.
Matt, I'd like to just go back to something you said at the very beginning. You were talking about not having enough people to do the work. And we've talked about this in some of our other conversations here and some other places. And, do you go into schools? Do you go to the job fairs locally, things like that? I mean, is there a way that you interface with people younger than graduates? Because I think one of the things we're realizing is that we're not enticing young people early enough to think about something that could be a good career for them. So by the time they get to be juniors, they've already dropped out. If they're going to, I mean, mentally they've dropped out and it's too late. So I'm just wondering, have you been invited over to Setamocha or, to talk with the 8th graders or?
I haven't, and I feel like some of my guilt comes from that I could do way more with that. The problem right now, to jump to the other end of that, is that I have no problem getting apprentices. Like if you go to that school, I hired 17 of them last year, but they can't put a heat pump in for a year or two.
Right.
I can constantly get, the problem with that number of 100,000 is that she gave us 5 years to do it. It's achievable, but not in that amount of time. I see no problem with continue to get young, hardworking men and women to get these things installed. It's the time lapse of it. What I'd really like to do is, and the other problem is, Leslie, is that I'm up at 6 a.m. and I'm working until 7, 8 o'clock at night with 72 employees. It's so difficult to squeeze any more time out without losing my family. So that's another conundrum that I have. And then the major power leaders of this industry, we're strung out. We're really strung out. And it's so hard. Eric, I gave Eric a run for his money to get me on the Zoom. It's very difficult. And I know it sounds like a pity party, but it's so difficult. I'd love to go speaking in front of schools. I think I'd be really good at it. And the other part of it is, I don't have one installer that makes less than $70,000 a year. They're $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year. The electricians are making anywhere from $30 to $50 an hour. I think that if one of the huge problems in our country is that we've been really pushed to go to college and that 4-year degree, where trade schools, these kids can make a huge impact in the States or in the world, really, to get your hands dirty and get these jobs done that we need every single day. And that is, the education goes even further back than that. I think that's where I'm gonna end up, honestly, Leslie. When I get done and I pass this torch down to my managers and my operating managers, I think that's gonna be my passion. Currently, right now, I'm exhausted.
Well, I appreciate you being honest about that. And Jane put in the chat, I don't know if you saw it, is there a way we can spread the word? And I think that one of the things that is happening in this region, as you probably know, is that there's a group that's working on workforce development and economic development through improving our workforce capability. And so we're kind of delving into what the limitations are, what the obstacles are. And it's really important that we do this, because everything, I mean, not just heat pumps, but if you look at the climate plan, every aspect of the plan talks about how it's a workforce development. It's going to increase the workforce. But the reality is that all of them require education in order to achieve that. All of them require the input in the youth level, or in the training level, in order to get that.
Yeah, youth level. We all grew up. What do you want to be when you grow up? Doctor, lawyer. It's like we need to get even. I want to go speak to kids in 6th, 7th grade.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this solar installations, electricians, plumbers, we need them all.
We need all of them.
So Right. And so we've got to begin to find ways to engage youth in thinking about their futures differently than pumping gas.
So
You
I
know,
want to make a comment here as a retired science teacher. One of the ways that would help is if we really have a strong science program all the way through,
Yep.
all the way through. It's not happening now. You know, this is all
and
science.
this is chemistry, Carol. This is this
Absolutely.
is chemistry.
Yeah, it certainly is. So, and here's the thing too, if science teachers can connect it to, oh, look what you can do with this. You know, here's something. I taught a class called Watershed Investigations where we had people who run the water treatment plants come in and talk to kids about what kind of career that is. That's all chemistry as well. So,
And I
it's
think
strong-
that
stronger
nobody
science.
talks enough about, so, you know, a lot of people, it's, how do I word this? I'm so careful with my words these days. A lot of people look at hands-on work as a lower paid job, or not as a job you can be as proud of. And I think that we have to nip that in the bud, because some of these guys that I've hired, they were working their butts off. Like, one example is I had one traveling window installer that worked for a huge window company and traveled the whole New England, making $35,000 a year, had no life, no home life, no life with his kids. He ends up with us. We train him within a year, 80 grand a year now. And he was like, I just didn't know that you could make that kind of money doing electrical. And he's getting his journeyman's, and he's after these things because he's like, I didn't know. I really didn't know that that you could make this. Usually laboring has what's the word I'm looking for? It equates to not making as much money, for layman's terms, you know. Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, you know, when I was in high school many years ago, we had auto mechanics, we had Future Farmers of America, woodworking. We had a lot of courses related to occupations and interests of the times. You know, now we need energy related jobs. We need communication jobs, broadband, like you said, electricians, mechanical installers, plumbers. And, you know, I don't know why we can't turn to the school system to help us, you know, make these exciting looking jobs and careers.
I can tell you one thing, Bill, because I taught for 20 years. The state of Maine at one point stated it as a goal that every student coming out of high school would go to college. What a mistake. It was a huge mistake, but that's what they were doing. They were pushing every kid toward college. And obviously that didn't work. All these kids came out of college with huge debt and no jobs. So, and now they're going to go work for Matt and get trained to do something that they can really do. So,
I think that's the sad business part of education. I think that education after high school has become a business, and that's my own opinion. Right? And I hope I don't offend anybody with that. But what scares me is that it's turned into a big money business where these kids are coming out of school owing $30, $40, $50, $100,000, and they're getting a job that pays $60,000 a year because it's saturated.
Yeah.
I think that to go even further, like some of the conversations that I have with my employees and their kids, like it starts at the parent level as well. You know, is that the guys that are working for me now we're raising our future electricians right now, you know, and I'm excited about that because a couple of my young installers, you know, 25, 26, 27 years old, they're having kids now. And I'm like,
Good.
this business is not going away for a long time. Heat pumps is not a fad.
Well,
you know.
Matt, I wish you had, I really wish you had the time. You know, we have a school board position open. It'd be great. Of course, you're up in Greenville, but yeah, I mean, you really, I think it's a shame that you don't have the time to do the
Where are
teaching.
you, Leslie?
I'm in Dover.
Oh, you're in Dover. Yeah, I mean, I would make time for Dover. I mean,
Right, but I don't think you can run for the school board from Greenville.
Well, I have a place in Dover too. That's what's funny about me. That's what's funny about me is that I stay in Dover. I'm building a house in Dover right now. I have an apartment in Dover. And because of my lifestyle, I bounce everywhere. So.
But I mean, that's the
that.
kind of thing we need to be doing. And Carol is right. And Bill talked about, you know, the way it used to be. We need to get the science back into the schools and the interest. We need to begin developing interest for young people to do some of these jobs that are there waiting that they can't.
And I think I'm at a point now where, because before I was just so busy building the business, is that, you know, I'm not too far away from right now. I just hired, I have 6 managers underneath me now, and then I just hired 4 apprentices for them to share that load that I work with. Leslie, do you work with Mark Coolin? Is Mark Coolin on the same board that you are, the school board?
I'm not on the school board.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
No, but somebody was talking about it the other day. Carol, you were, right? You were inviting me to join the school board.
Yeah.
I think was the way it was, or somebody, but there is an open spot on the school board.
There's two openings. Well, one will be a person who's going to run again, who's been on the board, but there is one position where the person doesn't want to continue. But you know what? Even if you don't feel you could run for school board right now, going to the school board and making a presentation to get it into the schools, you know, would help. Even that would, you know, to make them aware of what's awaiting these students. What's the real life going to be when they leave high school?
I would respond to any invite like I did tonight. The time that I don't have is going to seek it out.
Right.
Honestly, I'm just being very honest here, is that because I feel guilty about it. I wish that I could have more of an impact, and I think that is my future, as far as recruiting and spreading the information that is needed for these young minds. But if I was invited, I don't even know how I would say no. So it's not like tonight. Yeah, I honestly, did I have time? You know, of course, because I love what I'm doing here, but
well,
I would have been with the kids of the family, but I was invited, so I'm here. You know what I mean? So
how nice. We appreciate it.
yeah, of course.
Well,
I mean, so I'll wait for the invite, Leslie, and then I'll show up. I promise.
Well,
Okay.
we have a young school board member. She's been on for a year. Her name is Elisa Shine. So I'm going to tell her to get you an invite to address the school board.
I've done it before. I've done it for Dexter at the
Right.
vocational.
Yeah.
I've gone into Eastern Maine Technical School, EMTC, when it was EMTC, and I went into KVTC last year and got them pretty pumped up about it, about their jobs. You know what's funny is that I went into the graduating class. This is what's another interesting thing, is I went into the graduating class and I'm like, I will hire 4 of you guys now, okay? And I'll pay you $20 an hour. Right out of school, I'll train you. You're getting paid the further, because the class, I mean, even the teacher was having me come in and showing them some of the stuff because they just not, the resources aren't there.
Right.
So, and then you wouldn't believe it, I didn't get one phone call. So it's kind of deflating when you spend a whole day going in there and talking to these kids, and it's like, where did they go?
Hmm.
You know, did they just go through the motions of school to go through school? So another thing that really
Mm.
gets under my skin is that these. I mean, I'm not that. I'm not that old. I graduated in '98 out of high school, but it's like we had a different fire back then.
Mm.
And maybe it's because we weren't using our thumbs on our phones all day long. I don't know, but
Matt, I'd like to talk to you about that sometime, because, one possibility is to create a sponsorship that you start in junior high. You say to a kid who's in 8th grade, if you go through school and you take science classes and you finish up, I guarantee you, I will hire you at the end if you get this grade point average. Or if
yeah,
you,
I would do that for 4 or 5 kids.
yeah, that would be really, really powerful.
And I
That
think
would be a very powerful opportunity.
Leslie, you nailed it, because the other cool thing about Days World is that a lot of kids that grow up in Dover Foxcroft don't want to live in Dover Foxcroft after they graduate, right?
Mm.
A lot of them go to Southern Maine, but we have 2 stores in Southern Maine. There'd be nothing better for me to get Dover blood in Southern Maine. The best, and this is, I hope no one's in Southern Maine, I don't mean to offend anybody, but the hardest workers I have is the ones that moved from Dover Foxcroft, that grew up on farms, that ended up in Southern Maine. My Southern Maine 18, 19-year-old, they are a tough group to train. It's just different, and I don't mean to. I'm gonna throw it out there because it's the truth, and it's like, I would love to see these Central Maine kids not leave Maine. I'd love to keep them in Dover. I'd love to keep them in Central Maine, but if they're going to move anywhere, let's keep them in Maine at least, right? Instead of going to, out of state. But
Matt, on that.
I'm
Let's
100% behind that, 100%, and I will throw money at it.
Mm-hmm. So we have a comment from Shauna, the Vista representative, and she says junior apprenticeship program. So that sounds great.
Oh, yeah. This is where I need help from the community. All I know, like the little bit more of my history is, like, I was hired at 14 at an appliance store in Dexter. I started doing appliance repair for Dover, for Days World in Dover when I was 16 or 17. I don't know. I need help with this kind of stuff. I know I had to hire somebody in 2008 for Dan, Bob, and I, the 3 owners of Days World. We hired a guy from Alabama to teach us how to run a business. We're not college educated businessmen. We've learned a lot and we've paid to learn. But I don't know how to connect the dots. I think I have an idea, like what Leslie brought up. I never would have thought of that, and you would think that I would, but the gears are spinning so fast every day just to maintain a business that it's hard for me to separate myself from that and come up with those ideas, but I'm all about it.
Well, I think you're talking to
That's
the right
great, Matt.
person, because Leslie is good at this kind of thing. She's a good organizer.
I'm an ideas person. I'm not the implementer. I'm the ideas person.
Okay, I'm the organizer.
Right, exactly. And what a team, though. What a team.
That's how we work at Days World too, because you got Dan. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know Dan Shero or not.
Oh yeah.
Certainly do.
Oh, what a beautiful mind. Man, oh man. I can't even imagine my life without that guy. And then Bob Jankunas. So I'm the ideas guy, Leslie, at Days World. Like, I came up with the heat pump idea, and Bob said he wasn't gonna be happy until I was installing, because I was the first installer. I'm not gonna be happy until we have 1 install a day in Dover Foxcroft. And then we got going, okay. And then once we got going, you need to hire another person. I want 2 a day. And then it went to 3 a day. And then it's like, hey, let's do, I don't know, like 10 a day.
So on that note, Matt, if Eric and I decided tomorrow, oh yeah, we need heat pumps, how long would we be expecting to wait? Because you said you're flat out right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because if you would have asked me that question 3 years ago, I would have told you I'll be there this week. And then what I did was, like, so we have 4 full teams in Dover, and this is another mind blower. So we have Scarborough, with a population of like 300,000 around it, right? And we've got 3 teams, install teams in Scarborough, and we've got 3 full teams, that meaning electrician, helper, installer. So 3 people, so 3 times 3 is 9 in Scarborough every day that goes to homes and install these. Dover, Foxcroft, which is, I'm so proud of this with all, everybody from Dover and Central Maine here, I'm so proud of this one. Because Dover Foxcroft has the most installs in the United States for Mitsubishi Electric.
Wow.
So I have 4 teams in Dover Foxcroft. Every single year I add a team because it takes a full year to get one. I could use 3 more. So we could, right now we could have 7 teams full-time in Dover. And then Dover, of course, is covering all the way up to, you know, Patton, to over to Jackman, to Newport, to Brewer, and then all the way back around in every town in between. If you were to answer your question, it would take us about a week and a half to get there to measure it and pitch it. And then if you bought that day, it'll take you another 2 weeks to get it. So we're 3.5 weeks out.
That's pretty good.
It's
Wow.
crazy.
It's crazy good
abs-
though, right? It's good crazy.
It's a good crazy. Yeah, it's and we're still trying to refine the process. We're really trying to get better at customer service and be able to because we've put so many of them in. Now we have to really pay attention to how fast we can respond to our clients after, because that's when clients are precious. You know, that's when they're calling back, and we've dropped the ball quite a few times, and we haven't had it's hard to even get the office people. It's hard to find really good office people these days too. It's a full-blown problem. Bill, do you have a question?
Bill does.
Yeah, well, we had 2 heat pumps put in here, what,
I don't.
4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 at least.
And I think they were probably undersized for this house. But one of the things that interests me, beyond the technology itself, because most of these things are installed as just a unit on the wall. But I think I've seen some pictures of work you've done that embed the devices in a more aesthetic way in the ceilings or in the walls, so that you don't have this big plastic box sitting in your living room. And I think that's an important aspect of what you're doing too.
Yeah, so first I want to touch upon the undersized part. 5 years ago, 6 years, 7 years ago, heat pumps we were only doing single zone applications back then, and you were at a -5 degree unit. So the whole idea behind a heat pump that many years ago, which is only 5 years ago, right? But it's like light years when it comes to this technology ago. So the whole idea behind Efficiency Maine in the beginning, and to get rebates out, was to offset the BTU load that you need. So Efficiency Maine and Days World was expecting you to use your traditional source. So if we could offset 50% of the BTUs you needed at a third of the price, win, 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 and then air conditioning. So what has changed, Bill, is that now we're sizing to well below 0. So that whole sales process, that guide process that I talk about is it changes every year. I think that we've peaked out now with the technology that was the second part of your question statement, is that now there's all kinds of ways to do it. And I can't wait to invite you guys to our grand opening do you remember the Napa building in Dover? We recently purchased that, and it's going to be, I just did this in Ellsworth, so I already know what it's going to look like. So I partnered with Mitsubishi, and I said, hey, look, I got to show every single way that a heat pump works, meaning air handlers, which are ductless but ducted. Okay, so you have another hybrid system that comes into play, meaning we send that ductless inverted technology to an air handler, then we can hide it in the attic or the basement and then drop down, and we're not losing all the energy that a ducted system used before. So we've kind of broken another whole boundary with that. That's one way. And then we can add electric backup resistance backup to that for the minus 35 doomsday or Mainers, I call them. When it's minus 40, what am I going to do? Well, you're going to put one of these in. So we have that. And then we have the one way. So we have the 4-way cassette that goes up in the ceiling, so it's not on your wall. And then the next product I'm about to tell you again is I'm super proud of because I was part of the production of it with Mitsubishi, is that it's the 1-way cassette. It was designed mostly for new construction, but we install it in homes all the time that have trusses or floor joists that are 16 on center. Okay, so now we can go in, if you look up at my ceiling, we can go right in, and on that 16 on center, we cut out that rectangle, and then we insert the heat pump in there and then run the lines. We snake the lines outside through your sheetrock. And now, yeah, that'd be a little tricky with that, with that ceiling. Then we can run the piping outside, then it's up out of the way. And then now they're coming out this year with a propane backup heat pump. And then probably in another 6 months or so, I'm hoping in 2 years, because I've really been lucky to have been involved with all the engineering part of the heat pumps in Maine. So I get to see things that are coming way ahead of time. The other thing that they're doing is a propane backup. So you'll have that. And then they're going to go to air to water. So we'll be able to come into your home, convert because like 90% of Maine was forced hot water, baseboard heating, right? That was the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We're going to be able to put a diffuser in line with your hot water, heat the water, and then circulate it using heat pump technology. That's why I said earlier that this is not going away, and that's why I'm invested into what Leslie had brought up as far as the educational portion of it, because in the beginning, people thought I was crazy that this is a fad, right? What are you going to do when everyone gets a heat pump? I don't know. What did Henry Ford do when everyone got a vehicle? It's like, it's one of those things that it's going to continue to get better and better and better as far as the technology. And then, Bill, I could see like a lot of people in your situation that had bought a heat pump to supplement or to offset the BTU saying, I'm going to go whole home now. That the outdoor units, now you can put eight heads or 8 diffusers on one outdoor unit. So instead of having a bunch of 8, you have 2. So now that would never happen. We'd have one outdoor unit to those 2 indoor units. And then I probably would have guided you to put one in your master bedroom, because you spend a 30 life in it, so it just keeps changing and it keeps getting better. But you're kind of stuck though, Bill, because they're designed to work like 20, 25 years. So you're going to have to either upgrade, because you're not going to wear it out.
Yeah, we're gonna come talk to you. We've got 2 wood stoves, a new propane boiler, and a couple of outdated heat pumps.
See, Bill is a Mainer right there. I've got 3 or 4 ways to do it. Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, it's about 7:15, so I guess we should be wrapping it up. So does anybody have any more questions or comments for Matt? Eric?
Let's throw out my email address for you guys too for future. I'll take any questions right now, but email, I live via email. So you can get a response from me really quick on email. And if everyone wants to write this down, it's simple. It's my name, matt.scott@davesworld.com. And that's the most efficient way. And Bill, I don't mind coming out personally to take care of your future plans. I've got some really good sales guys in the area. They're just not quite up to my speed. And when I start a conversation with somebody about heat pumps, I kind of like to follow through. So instead of delegating it, but I'm here, guys. As long as you want, you can keep asking questions. I'm here for you.
Gloria?
I don't want to ask a question, but I feel like I understand heat pumps a lot more. I never really knew anything about it. So I just wanted to thank you. It's so interesting. I'm going to be hanging up and talking to my husband. We need a heat pump. I know we do. But we know several people that have installed them and are just so happy with them. So I just wanted to personally thank you. And I found it so interesting. And I feel like I know so much more, enough that I want to ask more questions. So thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, Gloria, so much for that. And I think what is super interesting about what you said is that a lot of people don't know that's how they work. And then when a new thing comes along that everyone gets so excited about, and like, oh my, it's so great, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, let's see how long that's gonna last, how long that feeling's gonna last, right? With anything new and anything that's really dominated the market like it has. One thing that I did in the beginning, which really, I would say, like just shot us ahead of the pack, I think, when it came to sales, slingshotted us was the word I was looking for, was that I understood, especially growing up in Maine, and my dad is a hardcore Mainer. It took him 6 years to get a heat pump from me, right? So he gave me the idea. He didn't mean to, and he doesn't even probably know, but I gave everybody a year to like it. Well, go put it in. If you don't, if everything we're saying, Efficiency Maine and all the environmentalists that are behind it and Days World's marketing didn't work, we would install it and you have a year to like it. So you have a full year, you have a full winter, and you have a full summer to like it. And if not, we come back and take it and give all your money back. That's how much we believe in it. And I'm sure Bill was offered that when he got his 5 years ago, I would imagine. Unless he was one of those guys that just was like, no, I'll take one. I want one right there. This happens a lot too. I'll take one. I want one right there, and I want one right there. You know, so he could have been one of those too. But the reason I tell you that is that when you do have the discussion with your husband, I don't want it to come from a sales pitch, because this is not what this was about tonight. I really believe in the product, and this is my, I don't know, 14th year, 15th year doing it, and it's proved itself over and over again. But you don't know that. You've never had one, right? So that offer goes to everybody.
I want to echo what Gloria said. I mean, I had a very vague idea about how the heat got transferred, but you made it very, very clear. So great presentation. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Matt. And there's one question, actually. Is it okay if we share your email on the Facebook? Because this is being recorded. So is it okay if that gets shared?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a part of my passion is marketing. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
I need to spread this information. Yeah, Carol,
Great.
Thank you for that comment. I haven't, guys, as I told you when I first got on the Zoom, I haven't exercised that muscle for a while as far as explaining it, because all I do is react to people that already want one. Did my analogy with heat being transferred in minus 460 degrees, did that make sense?
Yes.
To somebody that would never be having this conversation about heat transfer? Okay, good, because that I made that up. That whole thing was just like, how can I put it in layman's terms? And
So maybe you're going to have a third or fourth career in teaching.
I think so. I mean, I love talking about this thing that has completely changed my life. Yeah. It's so for the Dover people, this is some fun facts, is that you guys all know Days World, and it was an appliance store and all that. It's 16 times the size it was in 2006. So it's some fun stuff as far as a local community aspect. Our passion is to create jobs in Little, Dover, Foxcroft. And the other part that we get giddy about is that Ellsworth, Scarborough, and Wyndham are money generators that bring that money back into Dover. So we spend all of our money local. A lot of our material that goes down to southern Maine is all coming from our local region. So that was a part of we called it Robin Hood in the beginning. We'd rob the rich in Portland and bring it to Dover,
Yay.
fun stuff. Yeah.
All right, do we have any other questions, or does anybody want to make another closing comment before we sign off? Eric?
I want to steal one of your own words, Matt, and say that having you here is awesome.
Has that got annoying yet for anybody on the call? I've get some feedback that gets annoying.
Yes, it does, but don't stop because it's your signature.
One person told me the other day at Subway, they're like, I'm not going to buy a heat pump from you because I'm so sick of hearing awesome.
Oh. Well, you could change to super or something like that. So let me remind everybody before we go that this is an ongoing series. Hang on a minute, Bill. And that we have another event tomorrow night. Same Zoom link. Tomorrow we have Building Healthy and Resilient Communities, a presentation from Leslie on weatherization. So don't forget to tune in for that. Bill, did you want to?
Piggyback onto what you said, Matt. We'll see where we're getting the building set.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And if you guys need me to come back on, if you have any more interest, like I'll never say no to an invite. I'd love, like I said, as you can probably tell, I enjoyed this. So
We're gonna fill up your dance calendar. Don't you worry.
okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Good night,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye bye.